You can download the answer in the video for free, link in the description. For a split screen system that has support for an infinite amount of players, we will first do the basic setup for a level scene. When making levels, make sure there is no camera node inside the scene. Also make sure there is no camera inside the player scene as well. This is important as we will add the camera later through code for each player. Additionally, it is also important that you have the first player already inside of the scene tree for the level. Don't worry about the other players though, as we will spawn them later in through code. And for the file system setup for levels, I recommend having a folder that stores all the levels, and then have each level scene name be just a number for each level that the scene represents. I'll mention this later when we talk about loading levels. For the camera 2D that will be used on each player, create a new scene with the camera 2D node as the core, right click, rename it to player camera, or name it to whatever you would like, then go to scene save as, and save it. From here, you can make any changes that you would like to the camera's properties. Just make sure that enabled is true. Also, if you have a screen shake or any other camera effects, feel free to give this camera a script with those effects. Although for the simplicity of this tutorial, we will just keep the camera as it is. For the player scene that we will spawn and duplicate for each individual player, inside the scene, all we need to do is add a remote transform 2D node to the scene, and don't worry about setting any of the properties of this node as we will handle that later in code. Now a remote transform 2D is a node that will automatically provide its transform to whatever node it's connected to. The node connected is decided by the remote path, and we will later assign this code to the player camera. And transform is a value that stores scale, rotation, and position, meaning that by using this node, we avoid having to give a script to the camera that grabs and copies the player's position and rotation and scale, as instead this node will just handle that itself, keeping the code for the split screen simple and relatively easy to implement into any of your 2D Godot games. Now inside of the player script, we'll add a variable to represent the ID of the player. This basically helps us differentiate between what visual look or keyboard buttons each player node should use, as player 1 may use WASD and player 2 may use the arrow keys for example. Then inside of the ready function, we must first add the player to a group called player. This will later be used to grab the player that we have manually added to the level already, and by adding the player node to a group called player, it allows us to identify the node much easier in code. Then we will use a match statement, which is the same as an if statement, but more performant in this case, and easier to use when adding more players later. And this is where you may want to set the visuals for each individual player. And there are multiple ways of doing this. I chose to use a match statement, although you could choose to have a sprite sheet with all the players and just set the frame value to the player's ID, or you could have an animation with each player's visual look stored as an animation, then run the animation, which would just be an str with the player ID in the brackets. Then I set the modulate value to a random color, so that every character I spawn in this tutorial has a random color. Again, you may not have this as it depends on the visuals for your game. And then additionally for this tutorial, I have the player spawn in a random location to ensure that they don't spawn on top of each other, although this is something you may want to put inside of a match function with hard-coded positions. Lastly, inside of the physics process function, for the movement of the player, I have a variable called input which will record what input is being pressed and therefore the direction that the player is trying to move toward. Then I use the match function again, and based on what the player ID is equal to, and we'll use different inputs for the movement. Input.getAxis will provide a -1 if the first input is pressed, or a +1 if the second input is pressed. Else, if neither input is being pressed, then it will just return a 0. And adding normalize at the end of the vector 2 will make diagonal movement the same speed as moving in just one direction, basically converting a vector 2 of something like 1,1 to approximately 0.7, 0.7. Then to make the player actually move based on this input, I simply set velocity to input multiplied 50, which 50 is just a speed amount that I have set for this tutorial, although feel free to replace this with some sort of speed variable that holds a number. Additionally, as for the input, you will have to create every input manually inside of the input map. I haven't found a better way of doing this, but if you have, then please share it in the comments. And in case you're just confused, UI up, UI down, UI left, and UI right are built-in inputs that are defaultly added inside of every Godot project, which is why I chose to use them for one of my players. Now for the split screen system, we will create a new scene with a basic node as a core, right click, rename it to game, then go to scene save as, and save it. Add a color rect node to the scene. I'll set the color to black and the size to 160 by 90, as that is the size of the internal viewport resolution of the game. And this color rect is what will fill all the empty space left by the split screen system. So in the case you only have 3 players connected, then the fourth square will just be black, as this background behind the split screen system will show. Although feel free to put whatever visuals or custom background instead of this color rect. Add a center container to the scene, set its size to the size of your screen, which for me is 160 by 90. A center container is a container that will center the position of any of its children that are a green colored or control inherited node. Add a grid container as a child of the center container. And on the theme overrides, constants, make sure to set the H separation and V separation to 0. This is important as this container is what will store every single screen for the split screen system, meaning that if there is any separation, then there will be a thin black line between each screen. And don't worry about setting the amount of columns on this grid container, as we will do that later in code. Now as for level loading, we'll be doing that by adding the actual level scene as a child of one one of the sub viewports that we will spawn through code. The sub viewport will hold all the visual data for the player's camera, and that is basically what will be added as a child of the grid container. This means that for a level select, you would just load this game scene and provide the path for the actual level that you want to load through code, which we will later handle at the end of the video. Finally, select the game node and add a script. Inside the script, we will define one constant and 4 variables. Player camera scene will hold a reference to the player camera scene that we created earlier, which you can get the path to a scene by finding it in the bottom left file system. Then pressing right click and selecting copy path. You can now use Ctrl or Command plus V to paste them into the preload, which preload will basically hold a loaded version of the scene, which we can later use to create copies of the camera scene. And we use preload instead of just load, as preload is constant and only uses manually typed file paths, which is what we have just done. Then we will have an already variable for the screen container. This is the container that will hold all of the screens in the split screen system, and we use onReady so we can set the value of the variable here. And because we are setting the value to a node, we must use onReady, as you can only set the variable to a node once that node is loaded into the scene, which onReady is the same as just setting the variable inside the ready function, which is a function that runs its code when nodes have loaded. Level to load is the string path of the actual level that we want to load, but now we will just set this to the first level, although we will change this later at the end of the video. First sub viewport is the first sub viewport node that we have added to the scene. This is important as a sub viewport is what will store all the visual data for the screen, and we will have a sub viewport for every player that we add, although the first sub viewport is especially special, as that is what will be used to hold the actual level scene, and level node will hold the reference to the level scene, which will later be needed for adding extra players during gameplay, as we will need to grab the level node to add more player nodes to it. Now for adding a screen for each player, we will create a custom function to handle that called add new player viewport, which will have a built-in variable for new player node, which will hold the reference to a player node that we are adding a screen for. Inside this function, we will first create a variable that will store a new sub viewport container node, which is a container node that will display the visual content provided from a sub viewport node, which we will also create a variable that will store a new sub viewport node. And as for the properties on these nodes, we will just set the texture filter on the container to nearest as we're using pixel art, and we will disable 3D on the sub viewport as this is a 2D game. Then we will create a variable for the new camera 2D, which will be a copy of the player camera scene, and we make a copy of a scene by using instantiate on a load or preload. Then we add the sub viewport container as a child of the screen container node, which this is the grid container we made earlier. Then we add the sub viewport as a child of that sub viewport container, and we make the camera a child of the sub viewport, as the camera will tell the sub viewport where the screen is and therefore what pixel data to store, and the sub viewport container will display that visual data to us, and the screen container in tandem with the sub viewport container will place each screen in a sorted way. Then for setting up the camera so that it repositions to the connected player's position, we will first check a first sub viewport, meaning that we have set and created the first sub viewport node, which if we haven't set the first sub viewport, then we will first set the level node to a copy of the level to load scene, and we use load instead of preload, as the level to load string will later become a dynamic string at the end of the video when we do dynamic level loading. And you will also note we use instantiate again, as this will create a copy of the scene. Then we add the level node as a child of the sub viewport node, and we set the first sub viewport node to the sub viewport, which we set this node in this manner to ensure that the first sub viewport has the level scene, as we don't want to spawn a copy of the level scene for every single player, as that would be very inefficient and hurt FPS. Then to make the player's camera follow the player, we will first grab the level node, then get its tree, which is the core of the scene. Then we will use get nodes in group to grab every single node inside the player group, which this is the group that we added the player scene to earlier inside of their ready function. Then we do square brackets with a 0 to grab the first player node in the group. This is important as the split screen system setup phase is built around having only one player node inside the level node, never more than one or less than one. Although don't worry about the other player nodes, as we will add them later through code, but just make sure that you manually add only one player node on each level scene. Then we get the remote transform 2D node that we added earlier, and we set the node's remote path to the path of the player's camera. Get path provides the path to the camera relative to the scene tree, and by setting remote path, it means that the global position, rotation, and scale of the remote transform 2D will be copied by the camera 2D, causing the camera 2D to follow the connected player node automatically. And we use this method instead of just having the camera as a child of the player, as we intend to have the camera node inside of each separate viewport, rather than them all being in the same one viewport as the player, as all the players will be inside the level scene, meaning that the camera will be in a completely separate scene tree location compared to the player node, forcing us to use this system. Then in the case of the first sub viewport already exists, then we will grab the new player node provided through this function, which we didn't do this earlier as we needed the level node to exist before grabbing the manually added player. Then like before, we grab the remote transform 2D and set its remote path to the scene path of the player's camera. Then additionally, we set the world 2D of the sub viewport node to the first sub viewport's world 2D. This basically copies the visual data of the first sub viewport, which is needed to grab the visuals of the level. Although don't worry about the camera inside of the first sub viewport, as the camera we added for each individual camera scene will override that, meaning meaning that each screen will follow its connected player. Additionally, we didn't need to write this earlier, as the camera for new players will be in a separate sub-viewport node, whereas the very first camera for the very first player will be inside of the level scene. Now for the grid container to display each player's screen, without any of them exiting the bounds of the camera window, we will create a custom function called update viewport size, which we can call to update the split screen's position and size. Inside the function, we will first set the amount of columns on the grid container to half of the amount of children that the grid container has, and we use ceil to round upwards in the case that we have a decimal. This makes sure that if there is 2 players, their screens are stacked on top of each other, and if there are 3, then an empty square is in the bottom right. Now for the size of the screen inside of each sub viewport, or player's split screen, we will use a for loop to iterate through each child of the screen container node, using the made up variable called viewport node to represent the node that we are up to. We will then create a variable to store the sub viewport node, and we use getChild0 as the direct child of the sub viewport container will always be the sub viewport node. Then we create a variable to store the size of the game's internal resolution, which is done by using getViewport to grab the viewport that displays the core visual data to the game's window, then using getVisibleRect to grab the size of the square that is visible, and then .size to grab the size. This viewport that we are getting using this function getViewport is the one that you define inside of the project settings, meaning that the size that we are grabbing is the width and height that we set inside of the window under display. Then we will set the size of the sub viewport for each split screen. For the width, we just set it to the game size divided by the columns property. However, for the height, we set it to the game size divided by the amount of rows. Because rows isn't a built-in variable, we must calculate this ourselves. To do so, we can divide the amount of children that the screen container has by the amount of columns, which we convert both of these to a float so that we don't lose their decimal during the division. And we use ceil to ensure that if there is a decimal that it is rounded upwards. Now for the setup of the split screen, inside the built-in ready function, we will call the add new player viewport function, passing null as this is the first player being added, and the built-in variable therefore won't be used, as we will be instead grabbing the manually placed player node. Then we update the display of the split screen system as we have just added a player. It is important that you always call this function whenever you add or remove a player from the split screen system. Now to add more players to the split screen system while the game is running, for this tutorial I will just make it so that when I press the accept button, it spawns a new player, although this code that we will write will likely be put somewhere else in your game whenever you detect another player's input or when a player selects 2 player or something. First, we create a variable storing a copy of the player scene, using load to grab the player scene and instantiate to create a copy. We set its player ID to the child count of the screen container. Then we add this new player node to the level scene, call the add new player viewport function to give this new player their own screen. And because we just added a new player, we call the update viewport size function to resize all the screens so that they fit within the game's window. Now to remove a player scene, we will do the same as when we add a player, instead checking the cancel input. Again, keep in mind that this chunk of code that we will write will likely be put in a different location based on your game, and we are just using an input in this tutorial for simplicity to check that the split screen system works. First, we will create 2 variables. Screen to remove will grab the sub viewport container of the player that we are currently removing. This is done by grabbing the screen container, then using getChild to then grab the screen container of the player that we are removing, which by doing getChild count -1 by removing the last added player. Keep in mind, however, that in your implementation, this might be where you want to put the player ID value that you want to remove, rather than putting something like this, which just removes the last added player. Then for the player to remove, we separate this into a for loop, as we must use the for loop to iterate through every single player node to then grab the right one with the correct ID of the player that we are trying to remove. This is done by grabbing the level node, using getTree to grab the core of the scene, and grabbing all of the nodes inside of the group called player, and we use the made up variable I to represent the player node that we are up to. We then check if that player node's ID is equal to the ID that we are removing, and if so, then we update the player to remove. Then once both variables are set, we use the free function to remove each. Then because we removed a player, we must call the update viewport size function to update the visuals of the split screen system. Additionally, we use free instead of queueFree, as we need to remove these nodes immediately and not have them removed at the end of the current frame, which is what queueFree does, as otherwise the update viewport size function would run before the screen is removed, causing no change to occur. Now for dynamic level loading, we first need the file system to be set up properly. As mentioned before, make sure that you have a folder that stores all of your levels, and also make sure that each level's name is just the number that they represent for the sake of simplicity in the code. Then to know what level should load and what level we are up to, we must first create a global script. Go to File, New Script, name it Level Manager and press Create. Inside, I will just add a variable called current level and set it to 1. Then to make this script a global script, go to Project, Project Settings, then under Globals, select the folder icon, select the Level Manager script we just created, press Open, then press Add. Now what this has done is it has made the script always run in the background whenever the game is playing, while also allowing us to access and edit the variables within the script using this name on the left, which you can change by double left clicking. Now back inside the game scene that holds all the split screen logic, instead of setting the level to load variable manually to a written level scene, we can instead set it to a dynamic string, scene, which holds the path to the levels folder, the current level, which again, this is why we make each level scene's name just be a number, as that way we can directly use the current level variable from the level manager to grab the relevant level scene. Then we also add .tscn, as that is the file type of a scene file in Godot. And lastly, whenever you want to load a new level, simply increase the current level variable inside the level manager, then use getTree to grab the core of the scene, then call defer to run the function in the brackets at the end of the current frame to avoid certain errors, and call the reload current scene function to restart this game scene, as because the level manager is a global script, it will retain its state and values even though you reloaded the current scene, meaning that this game scene will restart back to new, then load the new level, which will have the new updated current level, and then run its ready function, loading that new level. Now you have a simple 2D split screen system with support for an infinite number of players and screens that you can add to any of your 2D Godot games. And don't forget that you can check out the project files linked in the description.